Folks, look at the Scottish rapper here. Obviously, I've been looking at a lot of data over the last few days. From the data, what has emerged is, for me, a potential breakdown of social cohesion, and this idea that the agreed reality that many disagreeable tribes exist within is now being called into question, because we have parallel realities now with their own lexicon, their own customs, their own moral logic, and the only thing they have in common is that they refuse to recognise one another's legitimacy. One of the other things that these parallel realities have in common is that they all have leaders who talk in heavily weighted moral language, and this heavily weighted moral language has always been a trick of politicians and the political class, or leaders generally, whatever form they may take, whether it was monarchy, in a kind of feudal system, or whether it's dictatorships, or whether it's kind of constitutional like democracy, like we have in the West. So, whereas before leaders used heavily weighted moral language to bring people into their tribe, to create a feeling in the population that everything's going to be okay, to satisfy that human need to latch onto something that's comfortable and safe. This crowd psychology deployed by politicians is either failing or has been so effective that it is actually the basis of these multiple realities emerging. So the question is, what is it that creates the demand for a politician to speak to you in such simplistic moral terms, like a child would be spoken to? What is it that creates this need in us for that sort of politics? Because it certainly is based on them supplying a demand. And it's actually, I think, a lot of it to do with feelings that human beings struggle with, the confusion, the anxiety, the uncertainty that human beings feel, and that on the periphery of their thought, their mind is always turning to what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen, what direction am I going in, what's going on, am I right about this, I don't know what's happening, those other people over there, I don't like them, I don't like what they said. And the politician arrives with an all-encompassing answer for you and says, look pal, you give me some money and you give me a wee bit of power and you give me a wee bit of trust, I'll go and sort out the world for you the way that you want it, and you will be happy. Now that is not to say that all problems in the world exist in our imagination. I'm not saying that movements for change, social change, political change, cultural change, are somehow misplaced. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply saying that this simple form of politics, which exists separate to these other movements, these movements are a response to the politics. But the politics itself, where all the power lies, that is absolutely about satisfying an infantile human need that we have to feel like we know what's going on, to feel safe. And this need arises in us because of human emotions that we struggle to cope with. And so how do we take more responsibility for how we feel? There was a time when I thought that the reason that I kept on getting depressed was because of capitalism. Now, in some wider cultural context, I might be able to prove that that's true, and somebody else might be able to prove it's a load of shite. But deep down in my heart, I always knew that I was depressed because I was drinking every day. But still, I went out into life with a strong moral conviction that the society that I was living in had to be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. And a lot of my reasoning for that was an emotional instinct. An emotional instinct based on me feeling deeply unhappy, frustrated, resentful about me not being in where I should be in life, and there's always a political movement or a political party on hand to validate that, regardless of how mental it is. There's always a political party on hand to say, do you know, how you feel is right, your instincts are right, and if you follow us, that's the righteous path, that's the moral path. And so here I'm going to construct some heavily morally weighted speeches and language where we'll define ourselves against these other amoral or immoral absolutes. But every political movement does that, and every political party does that, and they all have their own internal moral logic. So what we're seeing now is a manifestation of all of that, where the society we're in is beginning to, at least ideologically, break down. So there's no agreed reality anymore. There's no social cohesion, because even on the left there are multiple realities. Do you know what I mean? There's the intersectional identity politics way of looking at life, and if you ascribe to that, then that is all encompassing. That describes everything that's going on. But if you dispute that, or you have another way of looking at it, then the way that you look at it and the lens through which you see life, that's your reality. That's all encompassing. And the only thing these multiple realities have in common is an absolute refusal to recognise the legitimacy of one another's way of looking at things. And I think the root of a lot of this is, regardless of all our intellectual faculties, regardless of the very clever society that we've created, regardless of all of those things, there is an infantile human need at the root of all of us. And if we are unconscious of it, we become easily manipulated by classes of people who see themselves as being capable of managing us collectively, managing us as people, managing us as a society, by leading us down a moral path. And ultimately, what we seem to be needing now is less of the moral rhetoric, less of the high-minded conviction, and more of people being honest about the fact they don't know what's going on, and that includes politicians. Politicians being more honest about the complexity of life, and resisting the urge to engage in oversimplified rhetoric in order to consolidate and shore up their own power in times of change and upheaval. So what do you think? I mean, I certainly have drawn big conclusions about the world based on my own emotional experiences. Now, this is not to say, like I said before, that the world's problems only exist in our imagination. Far from it. I'm simply saying that if we as human beings and citizens and voters and members of the electorate or whatever are encouraged, as well as educating ourselves on the political issues, are also encouraged to engage in acts of fearless honesty in relation to our own thinking. Because unless we can get all of our emotional baggage out the way, we'll never truly ascertain or be able to laser in on the external world without being biased or prejudiced in some way. You know, but unfortunately, it's a great recruiting tool when you're faced with people who are genuinely confused, downtrodden, upset and angry. That's a brilliant recruiting tool for politicians who seek power, for all people who seek power or some sort of relevancy, whether it's activists, movements, whatever. If they were to tell you something rational, like, look, we can't make a decision based on this level of emotion. We're going to have to sit down and laser in on the actual problems. So let's first of all discuss what our own emotional issues are here before we proceed to build a political movement on something that subjective. Do you know what I mean? I wonder what you guys thought. I mean, it seems like this is the best time of any to discuss things in such navel-gazing terms. I know there's a lot of people here whose instinct is to recommit even more deeply to the tribe and to reassert their reality over all the other realities. But I've got a feeling that there's a lot of people out there who might be developing an appetite for a plurality of perspectives. So I wonder if you'll leave some comments below. Some recommended reading would be good. Some people have been putting me onto some good articles and videos to check out. And so I'm happy to hear what you guys think. Okay, take it easy.